Jess, I am doing just great. How are you?
Good. So I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and we have about 8 to 10 inches of snow. How's it going in sunny California?
Everything but sunny. It's probably we had our first frost warning, and we had snow levels down to 1,500 feet down here as well. So it's a bit nippy as well.
Okay, a bit nippy. We're nippy here. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the broadcast, and then we'll talk about Mr. Morris here, who is the Vice President of Guest Relations and Estate at Charles Krug Winery. And you're in Healdsburg, California right now. Is that correct, or are you somewhere else?
I am currently in Sacramento as we speak. I'm gonna correct a couple of quick things for you. Uh,
Okay.
Only just because, and it happens all the time. So
Okay.
it's Charles Krug Winery.
Oh,
And
excuse me.
that's
Charles
quite all right. And
Krug.
it's it happens all the time. So just for and then I in Healdsburg is where I normally live, and that's being my moniker on all social medias. It's Sonoma Wine Guy, so I'm in Sonoma County. So
Okay. And then I'm going to put our little banner up here for us. So we'll get this going right here. All right. So the Time to Wine broadcast with Jessica Lewis is a live broadcast featuring experts in wine, social media, marketing, and leadership. And it's 9 a.m. Pacific time, the second and the fourth Monday of the month. This is getting a little bit hard to manage here. The international YouTube interviews are every Friday at 11 a.m. Both broadcasts are featured on Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And I've also been approved for LinkedIn Live. So we are now going live on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live with a variety of our international people. So, and let's first of all, I'd love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel if you'd like to see more interviews. So Jim Morris is the Vice President and Guest Relations and Estate at Charles Krug Winery. Did I say that correct?
you got it.
I got it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your work history. I know you've worked in the wine industry for a long time, so I'd love to hear about what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, currently I've been for 4 years in Napa Valley at Charles Krug Winery, and prior to that, I've been in the wine industry for a little over 20 years at a variety of small startup wineries. A lot of wineries I've helped start or build out from the ground up, and it has been a kind of a very cool path that I've gone down. It's fun to see a winery from the very beginning to the very, to the day that we open, you open your doors. So, but I've always been kind of on the small mom and pop or the startup side of things of the wine business. And then 4 years ago, I got an opportunity to go to work in Napa at one of the best known and the oldest winery in Napa Valley, Charles Krug.
Okay. And so you've traditionally done a lot of startup work? What kind of startup
I
work were you
have, yeah,
doing?
I've been part of or starting up or build outs of 5 different wineries. My first winery was Martin Family Vineyards. Then it turned into Truett Hurst Winery. That we started from ground up from there, and then helped start up Flanagan Winery and MacPhail Winery, and I literally was given 30 days to start a winery called St. Anne's Crossing. All they had was a place and and bottled wine, and that was it. I had no employees, I had no infrastructure, I had no anything. I was just told by the owner to get it up and running by Labor Day weekend, which I did. So that was a lot of fun and a lot of excitement as well. So yeah, I just kind of fell into that niche that starting up wineries was something I enjoyed doing.
How did you start doing that initially?
It just kind of happened organically. I literally went from I was selling. My first job in the wine business was selling wine for a couple of brokers, and I worked for a small marketing firm. and just kind of began to happen. The first winery hired me to help just to do sales for them. And then they said, no, we want you to do more than just sales. And then they ended up just wanting to do everything. So they said, okay, you're running it. And so I learned a lot of trial by fire, and then helped sell that winery to the people that founded Truett Hurst Winery in Dry Creek. And so then that's when I literally started from from planting grapes and launching a whole new brand to opening day. So I got that up and running. And it kind of organically, it just kind of moved from the next project to the next project to the next project.
Well, it sounds really interesting. I just saw this really interesting little Hallmark Christmas movie where a marketing gal decides to come in. Those little Hallmark Christmas movies are a little hokey, but she's going to come into the wine industry and save this little winery that's going under with her grand marketing skills. So it
there you go.
I'll pass that one on to you. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the wines that you have at the winery and just California wines in general. I know there's a lot. We have a lot of different people from different countries, so they'd love to hear about it.
Well, you said this is a half an hour, right? I could talk a half an hour about this.
Well, I'll kind of put a hold on you. I'll say, okay, well, that's enough about California wines. Let's move on. Okay.
Yeah. No, so I did. So Charles Krug Wineries, it's the oldest winery in Napa Valley, and it really is what started the whole wine industry, and it has a rich, long history there. But Charles Krug himself, when the first varietals that were planted were nothing like we have planted now. So back in the day, it was Zinfandel. It was a lot of table grapes and things like that. They were experimenting as to what worked with wine back then. And then fast forward to the 1940s when the Mondavis purchased Charles Krug Winery, and they began to innovate and they began to plant Bordeaux varietals because Napa Valley was the place to grow, those sort of things in California. And they began to experiment. So they initially started with things like Chenin Blanc, and they did have Zinfandel as well. And so then eventually it evolved to more traditional varietals. We have Cabernet Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, a lot of the Bordeaux blending varietals like Cabernet Franc and Malbec and Petit Syrah. So we have all these things that's our current lineup of wines. California wines as a whole are really appellation specific. And it all has to do with, how cool it is, what the soil types are, where you're located. So, over the years, people have gotten very, very good at, planting the right grapes in the right areas.
And when Charles Krug started, what year did they start? And was there involvement when the wine movement started in California? What was the impetus, or was there movement coming from Europe, or what happened exactly?
Well, so Charles Krug started in 1861. We were the very first winery in Napa Valley, but Charles Krug himself worked at the very first winery in California called Buena Vista. And Buena Vista Winery was founded in 1855, I believe. And so Charles Krug was actually the first winemaker at Buena Vista. And so the two people, Count Agustin Harasti, who founded Buena Vista, and Charles Krug were best friends. But Charles Krug really wanted to do his own thing. And so that's why he eventually migrated over to the Napa Valley, which is about a 30-mile drive from the original Buena Vista. But this was during the California Gold Rush, and basically all of the people immigrated to California, came from all over the world, from Europe, from South America, from Asia. There was just a huge melting pot of people here, but they all had one thing in common: they loved to drink. And whether it was wine, whether it was beer, whether whatever, but they loved to drink. So essentially, the immigrants brought over what they loved. Italians brought over, they would bring over wine from their homeland. Same thing with the French. So that's really where the grape side, the grapes started to come in. Prior to that, California has all of these missions around California, and around almost every mission that the I think it was Jesuits, but I'm not sure. They all planted vineyards around them because they made sacramental wine, and I think the priests like a little bit more than just sacramental wine. So all the missions also had a really rich history in growing grapes at that time.
Europe has a rich history of using alcohol, like a lot of the churches and things. I don't know what year, but I had studied this for medicinal purposes. So there were, especially during the Black Plague, and there's a lot of alcohol history that's used for that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the things I know. Okay, we've had 3 years of uncertainty, and it's still going from what I hear, which includes COVID, travel, all kinds of things. So, do you want to talk a little bit? We'll first talk about the events and things that you have at the winery, because I know from seeing on your social media platforms, there is a lot of music and entertainment and events. So I'd like to hear about that, and then we can move into some of the silver linings of COVID. So, what are some of the exciting events you have going on right now at the winery?
Well, one thing I'm really proud of is the fact that our winery was just recently named the number one winery in the world
Wow.
for art and culture. And it was through an organization called Great Wine Capitals, based out of Bordeaux. And every year they, do an international um, uh, contest with regards to, there's various categories: the best winery, the best place to visit, so on. But this is the first year that they had the art and cultures um, uh, category. So the Napa Valley Vintners actually nominated us, and we won their award for the top destination winery. And so on a global basis, we became the hub of arts and culture. And it really goes to the kind of one of our core values at the winery, is that we wanted to become the cultural hub of Napa Valley. And we do so through food, wine, and the arts. And so the wine thing we got pretty well. We're across the street from the Culinary Institute of America.
Oh,
So
wow.
many of the world's great chefs have come through their building. And as a result, there's a lot of great chefs in Napa Valley with whom we've done projects and other work, in just a lot of food related events at the winery, and which has sort of been put on pause for the last 2 years. But then from a cultural standpoint, from the arts standpoint, there's a broad description of what the arts means. It's like, it's not just theatric arts or culinary arts, but it's comedic arts. It's painting arts, it's graphic arts, it's music. We've been home to the Napa Valley Film Festival for a number of years. So there's a lot of different art forms that we celebrate and we encourage. So last year, as we were trying to come through COVID, we were trying to figure out how to do it in the safest way possible, and because people just simply wanted to get back together and enjoy experiences. So we worked with the Blue Note, based in Napa, and they have so they're one of the world's great jazz clubs, and they have one in New York and Honolulu and Tokyo and in Napa. So many of these artists, we built an outdoor stage near the tasting room, and the stage was spectacular. But we did it very, we even had the Napa Health Department give us their blessing on this, but a special area that was basically no more than 300 people came, and we had top artists from Kenny G and Taj Mahal and Chris Bodie, Dave Koz, Pink Martini from Eugene, Oregon.
They're from Portland.
Or Portland, yeah.
But
I knew
near,
they
I've
were
been
from
there.
Oregon.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
So they were here for 6 shows. So we did over 60 concerts last year.
Oh, wow.
All done in our little outdoor theater. Saw over 20,000 people, but did it in a very, very safe manner. And
So how many people does the theater seat?
it's 300 maximum per show.
300. Okay.
Yeah. So, and they were all in little 2-top tables spread across our lawn. And for most of the artists that came to play, it was their first show out, in 2 years. So they were like ecstatic to be doing it. So it was such a success that we expanded it. And in this year, it'll even be bigger. We anticipate we can hold more people, as the rules hopefully will be eased by then. But last year, we were also home to Festival Napa Valley, which we have 2 large event areas on our property. The Blue Note was on the north end, which is the smaller space, but Festival Napa Valley built an even bigger stage that we had some of the world's great symphony orchestras, ballet performers, opera performers. Jennifer Hudson was the finale, the headliner, and so and this was a huge stage with over 1,000 seats, and it was all socially distanced, and so we did 10 days of shows for them, which we're going to do again this year. So we also, had everything from comedy series to we host a number of visiting guest artists where we display their art around the property. This year I'm doing a Latin festival where we're even going to have Latin auto artists. Then they're going to bring in, about 20 to 30 lowriders that have been painted, customized, and have a Hispanic art festival. We're even doing we're doing a 3-day jazz festival this year, where we shut the winery down and have 3 different stages going, to have some of the great artists of the world performing. So it's just, so that's one of the many ways that we're using to just bring people to to our property, introduce them to our wines, and then get them to come back and visit us again for a wine experience.
Well, it sounds absolutely fabulous. So, and what kind of dinners do you serve? Do you have dinners there also for all of the events?
Yeah, we have the first one we actually even have planned this year is, we're calling it the Red Wedding, but or the red kind of, not the Red Wedding. I think it's just the Red Dinner, and it has to do with, it's a little takeoff of Game of Thrones, but without all the bows and arrows. If you're familiar with that episode, but it's a period dinner and I can't remember the name of the chef right now. I apologize, but basically it'll be paired with our reserve wines, and so it's in period, meaning it'll be set in the 1700s.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was thinking that doing some sort of event based on the origination of the time during the gold rush would be really interesting. So it sounds like you're doing that. And then
Yeah, so
do the chefs across the street prepare most of the food, or is it prepared
no,
on
I
site?
I like to spread the culinary talent around a little bit. So,
Okay.
um, so while most of the chefs that are at the school are still students, there's
Okay.
many graduates that have started restaurants in Napa Valley, and a lot of them have fond memories of coming over across the street and visiting Charles Krug when they were going to school there. So, but there's such an amazing culinary world in Napa Valley that's there are a few places in the world that can rival it. So some of the chefs that we have are just spectacular. One of my very favorite events is something called Cochon 555 Heritage Fire, which is 40 of the top barbecue chefs from around the country come to our property, and everything is grilled, but it's all heritage or heritage meats, whether it's pigs, whether it's cows, goats, sheep, game birds. It's all native species to America. So there's a big movement to move away from farm raised or corporate raised, hog farms and beef farms and all that.
Yes.
So yeah, so we eat well in Napa Valley.
It sounds like you eat well, and it sounds like you have all kinds of interesting things to do. I'm kind of interested in moving away from my little sleepy city to a much more festive area. So it sounds like my kind of thing. So do you want to
Got
talk?
lots going on here, Jess.
Yes, it sounds like there's a lot going on there. This is kind of like there's not a lot going on here. So let's talk about some of the things to see and do in Napa or in your area.
There's
Sonoma,
only one,
Napa, Healdsburg, the whole area.
There's only one thing to see and do here, and it's just visit Charles Krug.
That's one thing to see and do.
That's the only thing I'd say, and then you can go home. No, I'm kidding.
I'd like to visit.
So no, so you need more than a week to even visit Napa Valley, but it's not just wine centric. It's like there's certainly wine and food. I always encourage people when they come, and I refer to it as wine country in general. So it's roughly the size of Rhode Island, the counties of Napa and Sonoma. So there's a fair bit of driving, but you can get from one side to the other in about 2.5 to 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
But in that space, you can visit some of the most beautiful redwood forests on the planet. You can see some of the most beautiful coastline. In Sonoma County, there's some of the world's great cheese producers because there's a lot of cattle and sheep and grazing land in Sonoma County. So as a result, there's cheese producers that are incredible. There's just the whole food culinary world in Napa and Sonoma are unrivaled, I think, in the anywhere. And if you want to come and hike some of the most beautiful hiking trails anywhere in the world, just north of the winery is Mount St. Helena, which is the mountain that everybody sees, and you can hike that mountain. But you can hike through the redwoods. You can, there's a long 8-mile hike along the coastline that's incredible. So a lot of things that are safe to do that, depending on people's comfort level and traveling and being with groups. So, and the reality is we're only an hour north of San Francisco. So you've got rural, beautiful life, or you can go big city life. So
you can do both. And there's a big international airport too. So
there are actually several. And I can't recommend flying into if you want to fly into Napa Valley, Sacramento is your best bet. It's like the easiest airport to get in and out of, and it's only an hour away from Napa. San Francisco and Oakland are also choices, but even the little town of Santa Rosa, which is in Sonoma County, has flights regularly from Vegas, LA, Seattle, Portland. So it's all over the place.
Many flights.
You can get into town very quickly.
So, okay, so we're talking about COVID really quickly. Mm-hmm. And COVID, we're still involved. We were hoping this would all just go away, and It hasn't. So do you want to talk a little bit about, from the beginnings of COVID, your experience in the wine industry and some of the silver linings that came from this?
It's it taught us to do different things that we had no idea what we were doing, and it turned out to be part of what helped save our business. Um, when the first wave hit in March of 19, um, none of us really even knew what Zoom was or virtual tastings or any of these wacky things. And it's like, well, let's figure out what we have to do here. We immediately, actually, within, I think, early April, launched our first Facebook Live shows from the winery. And the idea was to just keep in touch with people more than anything, but hopefully to sell a little bit of wine. And but we after we did about 8 Facebook Live shows and didn't really sell a lot of wine, and there were a lot of work to do. So it's like our immediate need was, how do we continue to sell wine as a winery to our customers and to continue to stay engaged, because that's really the important part of our business, is our relationships. So we then put together a really robust program of virtual tastings, and we explored a lot of different ways to do virtual tastings. For one of the first ones we signed up with was a company called Events and Adventures, and they're a dating service, and they used to do wine tastings in Napa Valley. Well, since they couldn't do wine tastings at a winery, we said, well, let's just do them virtual. And all of the singles that want to get together will host a tasting. And we did, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 of these tastings where we sold wine to all these potential singles. And there was like a little mingling session, but we pretty much led them through, a tasting and it was a big success for them. We even did a virtual road race, a running race around Napa Valley, and hundreds of people from around the country ran this race virtually. And we did happy hours every week where we would send people wine. But we also did private wine tastings for families and friends, and everything was surrounding sending them wine and cheese, sending them wine and chocolate and cheese. We did lots of different virtual tastings. So far, we've, in a year and a half, we've done probably 300 virtual tastings. And it really it transformed our business to where now I have 2 full-time staff members dedicated to doing our online experiences.
Well, I guess, and then you just had a really interesting travel experience trying to leave town.
Oh, well, traveling's
That's not the silver lining, but
yeah, I mean, traveling's not for the faint of heart these days. You just have to be ready for craziness, and we're seeing thousands of flights canceled. I had a flight to South America that was canceled, and was a nightmare trying to sort that out, which we still haven't finalized. But it's, so people are a lot of our people that do visit Charles Krug, more than half of them are from the state of California or are driving distance, but still a surprising number are flying into town. They still want to come to California, and they want to visit wine country. And even though we're partners with the Napa Valley Wine Train, that's one of the premier experiences in Napa. And so the wine train stops at Charles Krug, and I get 50 people a day off of their trains that come for a nice tour and tasting. And, it's a great way to experience Napa in a very unique way.
Oh, it sounds lovely. Now we're at about 29 minutes, so we'll kind of wrap things up here really quickly. Mm-hmm. So do you want to tell us, okay, since you've worked with a lot of startups, would you like to come up with, do you have some tips for people starting businesses or entrepreneurs?
All right. You're going to laugh when I say the first one. Do not ever name a winery after your family. Ever.
Why?
And I'll tell you why, because a number of the wineries that I've worked for, the next generation isn't interested in the winery. And if you sell your winery, you now lose the use of your name. Um, I've had three different
Oh my
wineries
gosh.
that the founding owners no longer can use their names, including the Madavi family. We can't, because Robert Madavi, when he split away from the Charles Krug family, his parents bought Charles Krug. He and his brother Peter ran Charles Krug until the mid '60s. They had a famous falling out, but Robert immediately went and trademarked the Madavi family name for the Robert Madavi family, but then eventually was sold to Constellation, and now Constellation owns the Madavi family name, and therefore we can't use it. And it's one of those things that gets really, really tricky from a succession planning standpoint. So that's honestly one of the first things I would tell people is like, find something clever or unusual to name it, or something that stands out, and don't name it after an animal. Enough animal stuff already. Um,
Cupcake. There is, when I was working in Italy, a lot of their wines have 17 or 18 generations starting
yep,
back in the medieval ages, and they still have the family name on the wine. So it's kind of interesting to see what's happening this way as opposed to some of the European families where the entire family works in the wine industry and it just continues for 17 generations. So it's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Well, it's so different here because I mean, in fact, we're now family owned. We're on the fifth generation Mondavi, um, and so I'm on the executive team that helps run the winery. And one of our basic criteria is that our goal is to keep this a multi-generational family owned winery, and that is our goal is to do that. So we're into the fifth generation now, and but our model set is the Antinori family, which Antinoris have been they're 22 generations into it. They're the longest family owned winery in the world. Um, so we're doing some really, we have a little bit of catching up to do with them, several hundred years worth, but
Yeah.
um,
And I'm blessed to have been there. So yes, yes.
yeah,
Several hundred years worth. Yes.
yeah. So that's but yeah, no, but often it, the wine industry in California, the easiest thing in the world to do is to start a winery and make wine. The hardest thing in the world to do is to sell wine, because there are I believe, over 22,000 individual wineries or wine brands in the United States that are available. You go into any grocery store, you'll have no more than 300 names. Um, you go just even in Napa Valley and Sonoma County alone, there's 1,100 wineries within a 2-hour driving radius. It's like that's a lot of so it the shiny new toy that people always start off with after about 3 or 4 or 5 years, especially during hard years or difficult vintages, the luster wears off, and it's a really hard industry to continue to be relevant, to be interesting, to make great wine. It's crazy expensive to be in the business too.
And to stand out from the crowd, I would imagine.
Yep.
You
Yeah. I mean,
market
how do you
yourself in
stand
such a
out?
way that you stand out. It sounds like you guys stand out though. Do
Well,
you
we have to
stand
work
out
hard
or
at it. Yeah, I
you have
mean,
to work hard at it? Okay.
especially by doing uh, the arts programs that we do to bring people to the winery in different ways, not just to come in for a wine tasting, because there's 1,100 places that will do that for you, but come for a jazz show, or come for a culinary event, or come for homemade pizza, or come for a comedy show, or come for a variety of things, and then come back and buy wine and join my wine club and do all
Oh,
that stuff.
oh, it just sounds fun. So tell me real quickly, how do people find you if they're looking for you?
Uh, they just come to charleskrug.com, and that will give them links to everything. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Charles Krug Winery. So that's the easiest way. I monitor most of the social media side of it, so often you'll get to me. I'm also on social media in Instagram and Facebook as Sonoma Wine Guy, and Napa_Wine Guy. So you can find me there as well.
And I am Jessica Lewis. One of the things that you were mentioning is I've had a lot of international people from different countries asking me to do some sort of broadcast in regard to wine tastings from, let's say, South Africa, and then have groups together where the South African wine is shipped, or cheese or meats are shipped from South Africa, or music, or have some sort of cultural package like that. So I'm working on that too. All right. So we are going to end our broadcast today. I am currently working on tours to different areas, and I am working on 3 broadcasts, which is a full-time job. So I will hit the end the broadcast here. And thank you so much, Jim. We'll see you soon.